cold open, the moment everything changed. She's crashing. We're losing them both. Dr. Adebayo's voice cracked as the monitors screamed their deadly symphony. 12 doctors stood frozen around the operating table where Amara Kwame lay dying, her billionaire husband's anguished sobs echoing through St. Catherine's penthouse delivery suite. "Someone do something!" Ambassador Kwame roared, his $50,000 suit soaked with sweat and tears. That's when the cleaning woman spoke. "I can save them." Every head turned toward the doorway, where Chioma stood, mop still in hand, her humble uniform stained with bleach. The silence was deafening. "Security!" Dr. Adebayo shouted. "Get this madwoman out!" "Wait!" The word came from Amara, barely a whisper, her hand reaching toward Chioma. "Let her try." What happened in the next 7 minutes would make headlines across Africa. But the secret Chioma carried would change everything. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever? The Lagos traffic was its usual nightmare when Ambassador Kenneth Kwame's convoy of black Mercedes rushed through the streets, sirens blaring. Inside the lead vehicle, Amara clutched her swollen belly, her face twisted in agony. "Kenneth, something's wrong," she gasped. "This isn't normal labor." Her husband squeezed her hand, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "We're almost at St. Catherine's. The best doctors in Africa are waiting." St. Catherine's private hospital rose like a glass and steel palace above Victoria Island. Its reputation was legendary, a place where Nigerian presidents, oil tycoons, and foreign dignitaries came to be healed. A single night in the penthouse maternity suite cost more than most Lagosians earned in a year. Dr. Adebayo Mensah waited at the private entrance, his team of specialists assembled like an army. British-trained, internationally published, he delivered the children of 3 African presidents. This would be routine. Ambassador Kwame, Mrs. Kwame. He greeted them with practiced confidence. "Everything is prepared. Your son will be born within hours." But he was wrong. By midnight, Amara's condition had deteriorated. The baby was breech, cord wrapped dangerously around his neck, and her blood pressure was climbing into stroke territory. "Call Dr. Chun from Singapore," Dr. Adebayo ordered, "and get Professor Okafor from South Africa on standby." In the janitor's closet on the 3rd floor, Chioma Okonkwo changed into her cleaning uniform. At 28, she looked older, worn down by years of night shifts, and carrying secrets too heavy for one person to bear. She pinned her name tag to her chest and grabbed her card. Another night, she whispered to herself, loading spray bottles and rags. "Chioma." Nurse Blessing poked her head into the closet. "They need extra cleaners on the penthouse floor tonight. Some billionaire's wife is having complications. All hands on deck." Chioma's heart skipped. The penthouse floor, where the real doctors worked, where she once belonged. "I'll clean the lower floors," Chioma said quickly. "No choice, girl." Dr. Adebayo's orders. "Everyone up there now." As Chioma rode the elevator up, she studied her reflection in the polished doors. 7 years ago, those doors had opened to reveal Dr. Chioma Okonkwo, youngest midwife to graduate top of her class from the University of Ibadan. The future had been bright. Then came the night that destroyed everything. The penthouse floor was chaos. Doctors rushed past, their faces grim. Through the viewing window of the main delivery suite, Chioma could see a woman on the table, surrounded by monitoring equipment that blinked red warnings. "She's deteriorating fast," a nurse muttered nearby. "They've tried everything. The baby won't come, and she's bleeding internally now." Chioma's hands tightened on her mop handle. She knew that posture, that specific pattern of distress. She'd seen it once before, 7 years ago, in a small village clinic where she'd been doing her rural rotation. That night, she'd saved 2 lives with a procedure she'd learned from her grandmother, a traditional birth attendant. The same procedure that had gotten her license revoked when the medical board called it dangerous and proven traditional medicine. "Keep the hallways spotless," a senior nurse instructed her. Important people everywhere. Chioma nodded and began mopping, her mind racing. Whatever was happening in that room, it wasn't her business anymore. She was just a cleaner now. She had to stay invisible. She had to stay safe. She had to forget she'd ever been anything more. By 2 a.m., St. Catherine's penthouse floor had transformed into a war room. Dr. Sarah Chun arrived from Singapore, still in her travel clothes, and immediately took over the ultrasound. Professor James Okafor flew in from Johannesburg. Two specialists from London joined via video conference, their faces grave on the wall-mounted screens. Ambassador Kwame sat in the waiting area, his head in his hands, while his security team stood silent guard. His phone buzzed constantly, presidents, business partners, family, but he answered none of them. Inside the delivery room, 12 doctors now surrounded Amara. Cervix fully dilated, but the baby won't descend, Dr. Chun reported, her voice tight. The cord is wrapped twice around the neck, and there's a shoulder dystocia complication I've never seen this severe. C-section, suggested one of the British doctors via video. No time, Dr. Adebayo said. Her blood pressure is 200 over 130. She'll stroke out before we can even make the first incision. We need to deliver vaginally now. Forceps delivery, Professor Okafor offered. Too risky with the cord positioning. We could strangle the baby. Chioma cleaned just outside the door, her ears catching every word. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. The ancestors gave women bodies that know how to birth. Sometimes the modern doctors forget to listen to what the body is saying. She shook her head. Not your business, Chioma. Not anymore. Try the McRoberts maneuver again, Dr. Chun instructed the team. Chioma's breath caught. Wrong approach for this situation. She could tell from the monitor readings visible through the door window. The baby's heart rate pattern, the mother's contractions, they needed rotational delivery, not more positional changes. Heart rate dropping, and nurse called out. Baby's at 80 beats per minute. We're running out of options. Dr. Adebayo's voice carried a tremor of desperation now. Someone think of something. Chioma's mop moved in automatic circles on the marble floor, but her mind was calculating. Angle of the baby's shoulder, degree of cord compression, maternal pelvic measurements she could estimate from here. She delivered a nearly identical case in that village 7 years ago. A teenager, everyone said would die. Chioma had used her grandmother's technique. A specific combination of external rotation, maternal positioning, and precise internal manipulation that wasn't in any textbook. The girl and baby had lived. Chioma had been called before the medical board for practicing traditional medicine without evidence base and endangering patients with unproven techniques. Her license was suspended, then permanently revoked when she couldn't produce peer-reviewed studies to support a method passed down through generations of traditional birth attendants. Blood pressure, 210 over 140. The nurse's voice cracked with panic. Through the window, Chioma saw Amara's eyes rolling back. She's seizing, Dr. Chin shouted. Magnesium sulfate now. Ambassador Kwame burst toward the delivery room door, held back by two nurses. Save my wife. Save my son. I'll pay anything. Money can't fix this, sir, Dr. Adebayo said grimly. We need a miracle. Chioma's hands trembled on the mop handle. She could see it so clearly, exactly what needed to be done, the precise sequence of movements. Her fingers remembered the technique like a pianist remembers a long unplayed concerto. But she was just a cleaner now. She had no right. She had no license. She had no voice. Time of maternal seizure, 2:47 a.m., someone announced in the room, and Chioma heard the sound of hope dying. We're losing her. Dr. Chin's voice cut through the chaos. Someone call it. We need to decide. Do we try to save the mother or the baby? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Ambassador Kwame's legs gave out. His security chief caught him as he collapsed, a broken man watching his world end through a delivery room window. Save Amara, he whispered. Save my wife. We can have other children. Sir, with respect, we might lose both if we don't act in the next 3 minutes, Dr. Adebayo said, his face ashen. Chioma's mop clattered to the floor. Every eye in the hallway turned toward her. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the terrible silence between the monitor alarms. "I'm sorry." She bent to retrieve it, her heart hammering. "Cleaner, not now," a nurse snapped. But Nurse Blessing had frozen, staring at Chioma. She was the only one in this hospital who knew. The only one who remembered when Chioma had walked these halls in scrubs instead of a janitor's uniform. Their eyes met. Blessing gave the smallest shake of her head. "Don't. You'll only make it worse." Inside the delivery room, Amara's body convulsed again. The baby's heart rate dropped to 60. "Fetal bradycardia," Dr. Chen called out. "We're losing them both." Chioma's grandmother's words burned in her mind. A healer who refuses to heal when she can is worse than someone who never learned at all. But they destroyed her for healing last time. Called her a danger. A fraud. Stripped away her identity. "Emergency crash C-section," Dr. Adebayo ordered. "It's our only shot. Prep the ore now. She won't survive the anesthesia in this state." Professor Okafor protested. "Then what do you suggest?" Dr. Adebayo spun on him. "You're the expert from South Africa. Give me an answer." Silence. 12 of the finest doctors in Africa, and no one had an answer. Chioma's feet moved before her mind could stop them. One step toward the delivery room door. Then another. "Excuse me." Her voice came out small. No one heard. "Excuse me," she said louder. Dr. Adebayo glanced her way, irritated. "I said not now. I can save them." The words dropped like stones into still water. Time seemed to stop. Doctors turned. Nurses stared. Through the window, even Ambassador Kwame lifted his head. Dr. Adebayo's face went from confusion to fury in seconds. "Security, remove this woman from." "Wait." The word was barely audible, but it came from Amara herself. She'd open her eyes. Her hand, trembling, reached toward the window, toward Chioma. "Let her try," Amara whispered. "Please, I'm dying anyway." "Mrs. Kwame, this woman is a janitor," Dr. Adebayo sputtered. "She has no medical." "I was a midwife," Chioma said clearly now, stepping fully into the doorway. "University of Ibadan, top of my class. I lost my license 7 years ago for using an unorthodox technique to save a mother and baby in a case exactly like this." "Then you're not qualified." "They're alive," Chioma interrupted. "The mother and baby I delivered that night. They're alive, doctor. Can you say the same will be true here in 5 minutes?" The monitor screamed. Amara's eyes fluttered, closed again. "Kenneth," Amara breathed. "Let her." Ambassador Kwame's voice was broken but firm. "Let her try. What do we have to lose?" "Your lives, potentially," Dr. Adebayo said. "I cannot allow." "It's not your choice," the ambassador cut him off. "It's mine, and my wife's. Let her try." Dr. Adebayo looked at the monitors, at his colleagues' helpless faces, at the dying woman on the table. He stepped aside. Chioma's hand shook as she entered the delivery room properly for the first time in 7 years. The familiar smell of antiseptic and blood hit her like a memory. The monitoring equipment, the surgical lights, the organized chaos. This had been her world once. "This is insane," Dr. Chen muttered, but she didn't leave. "Someone time this," Dr. Adebayo said coldly. "When she fails, I want documentation that we gave her exactly 7 minutes before we intervene." Chioma ignored him. She moved to the sink, scrubbing her hands with practiced precision. Muscle memory. Her body remembered, even if the world had tried to make her forget. "I need 3 nurses," she said quietly, "and I need everyone else to step back." "You can't order my staff," Dr. Adebayo started. "I'll help." Nurse Blessing stepped forward. "Me too," said a younger nurse named Grace. An older midwife named Sister Patience nodded. "I'll assist." Chioma approached Amara, whose breathing was shallow, skin gray. She placed her hands on the swollen belly, closing her eyes. Her grandmother had taught her this, to listen with more than ears, to feel with more than fingers. "The baby is here." She touched the right side. "Shoulder caught here. Cord wrapped. Here and here." She opened her eyes and looked at Amara's half-conscious face. "Mrs. Kwame, can you hear me?" A weak nod. "This will hurt. But I promise you, I will bring your son into this world alive." Do you trust me? Amara's lips moved. Yes. Chioma turned to the nurses. Sister Patience, I need you to hold her left leg at precisely 90 degrees. Grace, the right leg, but at 70 degrees. Nurse Blessing, when I tell you, you'll apply pressure here. She indicated a spot on Amara's abdomen at a 45-degree angle downward. That's not standard procedure for, Dr. Chin began. Nothing about this is standard, Chioma said. Time. 6 minutes 30 seconds remaining, Dr. Adebayo announced. Chioma positioned herself, her hands moving to internal examination. She could feel it, the baby's shoulder wedged against the pubic bone, the cord pulsing weakly around the tiny neck. This technique is called omanala rotation, Chioma said, partly for the baby's medical record, partly for her own courage. It comes from Igbo traditional birth practices, refined over centuries. Her grandmother's voice in her head. The baby knows the way. You just help them remember. Chioma's fingers moved with infinite gentleness, feeling the angle of the shoulder. Now, Sister Patience, lift the leg. Grace, lower yours. Blessing, pressure. Now, what are you? Dr. Adebayo leaned forward. Quiet. Chioma snapped with an authority she'd forgotten she possessed. She felt it. The shift. Millimeter by millimeter. The baby's shoulder rotating into the oblique diameter of the pelvis. Heart rate improving. A monitoring nurse gasped. Up to 90. Impossible, Dr. Chin whispered. Chioma's hands moved in a spiral motion, coaxing, guiding. Amara, I need you to breathe with me. Small breaths. That's it. The room held its collective breath. Rotate the shoulder posteriorly while Chioma instructed Blessing, and together they moved in perfect synchronization. There, the release, the give. Now, Amara, push. Small push. Amara's weak push combined with Chioma's guidance, and suddenly, a shoulder emerged. Then another. Sweet Jesus, Professor Okafor breathed. Again, Amara. One more. And then the room filled with the most beautiful sound in the world. A baby's cry. Time, Chioma said, cradling the squalling infant. For minutes, 18 seconds, Dr. Adebayo said, his voice hollow with shock. Chioma quickly unwrapped the cord and placed the crying baby on Amara's chest. Mother and son, both alive, both breathing. The penthouse delivery room erupted in chaos, but this time, it was the chaos of joy. Ambassador Kenneth Kwame burst into the room, tears streaming down his face as he saw his wife cradling their son. The baby's cries had faded to soft mewls as Amara held him against her skin, her eyes full of exhausted wonder. You did it, Kenneth sobbed, falling to his knees beside the bed. You're both alive. You're both alive. The medical team stood frozen, still processing what they'd witnessed. Dr. Sarah Chun was already on her phone, likely recording notes. Professor Okafor stared at Chioma like she was an apparition. Dr. Adebayo's face was unreadable. Chioma backed away quietly, heading toward the sink to wash the blood from her hands. Her whole body trembled now that the adrenaline was fading. She'd done it, but at what cost? Wait. Ambassador Kwame's voice stopped her. Don't you dare leave this room. Chioma turned, expecting anger, accusations, perhaps security to finally escort her out. Instead, the billionaire was looking at her with something like reverence. What's your name? He asked. Chioma Okonkwo, sir. Chioma Okonkwo, he repeated, standing. You saved my wife's life, my son's life, everything I have in this world. His voice cracked. How can I ever repay you? There's no need, sir. I only did what 12 specialists couldn't do, he interrupted. What millions of naira worth of medical expertise couldn't accomplish. He turned to Dr. Adebayo. Why is this woman cleaning floors instead of delivering babies? The question hung heavy in the air. Dr. Adebayo cleared his throat. Mr. Ambassador, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Answer me. Now. She lost her medical license, Dr. Chin said, looking at her tablet. I just pulled her records. Chioma Okonkwo. Midwifery license revoked 7 years ago by the Nigerian Medical Board for practicing unorthodox techniques without evidence-based support. The same unorthodox technique that just saved my family. Silence. Ambassador Kwame's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at Chioma. That was the president of Ghana. He wants to know if his goddaughter Amara and his godson are well. He paused. Should I tell him they're alive because of a cleaning woman? Or should I tell him they're alive because of Dr. Chioma Okonkwo, who happens to be the most skilled midwife in this entire hospital? Kenneth, Amara called weakly from the bed. Bring her here. Chioma approached hesitantly. Up close, she could see Amara was younger than she'd thought, maybe 32 or 33, with kind eyes despite her exhaustion. What they did to you is wrong, Amara said simply. Taking your license because you saved lives differently than they taught in their textbooks. That was wrong. I broke protocol, ma'am. I understand why they... No. Amara's grip on her hand was surprisingly strong. You trusted knowledge that goes deeper than protocols. Knowledge passed down through generations of African women who brought life into this world long before there were hospitals. She looked at her son. We almost lost everything tonight because these doctors couldn't see past their textbooks. Kenneth pulled out his phone again. I'm calling the Minister of Health, and my lawyer, and every person I know on the Nigerian Medical Board. Sir, you don't have to, Chioma started. You're right, I don't have to, he said firmly. I want to. By the end of this week, Dr. Okonkwo, you'll have her license back, and you will never clean another floor again. Dr. Adebayo finally found his voice. Ambassador, the medical board decision was made years ago. It's not something that can simply be reversed. Watch me, Kenneth said quietly, and there was steel in his voice that had built business empires across 3 continents. 3 days later, Chioma sat in a conference room at St. Catherine's Hospital, facing the hospital board, the Medical Association of Nigeria representatives, and a hastily assembled review committee. Ambassador Kwame had worked fast, but the establishment was pushing back hard. Mrs. Okonkwo, began Dr. Femi Adelik, chairman of the Medical Association, no one disputes that you achieved a remarkable outcome. However, medicine is not about singular miracles. It's about proven, repeatable, safe practices. What she did was repeatable, interjected Professor Okafor, to everyone's surprise. I've spent the last 3 days researching. There are documented cases of similar techniques in traditional birth practices across West Africa. Success rates are actually quite high. Dr. Adelik frowned. Documented where? In peer-reviewed journals, in oral histories, in clinic records from rural areas, in the memories of traditional birth attendants who've practiced for 50 years, Okafor said. Just because Western medical journals haven't published it doesn't mean it's not valid. That's exactly what it means in modern medicine, Dr. Adebayo said coldly. From his seat at the table, he'd been silent until now. We cannot set a precedent that anyone with traditional knowledge can override trained physicians. I'm a trained physician, Chioma said quietly. Top of my class. I simply also learned from my grandmother, who delivered over 3,000 babies in her lifetime without losing a single mother. An impressive claim, but unverifiable, Dr. Adeli countered. The door opened, and Nurse Blessing entered, followed by a young woman carrying a 6-year-old boy. I'm sorry to interrupt, Blessing said, but this is Adana Nwosu and her son, Chukwudi. They traveled from Enugu to be here. Chioma's breath caught. Adana, the teenager from 7 years ago. The case that had cost her everything. Adana stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. I was 16 when I went into labor. Every doctor in our local hospital said I would die, that my baby would die. The pregnancy was too complicated. They wanted to send me to Lagos, but there was no time. She paused, looking at Chioma with tears in her eyes. Dr. Chioma was the only one who didn't give up. She used her grandmother's method. For hours, she worked to save us. And she did. Adana pulled her son forward. This is Chukwudi. He's healthy, smart, and alive. I'm alive. We're both standing here because Dr. Chioma knew more than what was in the textbooks. Young woman, Dr. Adelik said gently, we're glad for your outcome. But the rules exist for a reason. So does mercy. Amara Kwame's voice came from the doorway. She entered in a wheelchair, pushed by her husband, cradling her 3-day-old son. The room immediately stood. "Mrs. Kwame, you should be resting," Dr. Adebayo said. "I'll rest when this is resolved," Amara said firmly. "Dr. Adelik, you speak of rules and protocols. I was surrounded by 12 doctors who followed every protocol perfectly, and I was dying." She looked at Chioma. This woman had the courage to do what none of them could, not because she was reckless, but because she knew more. Ambassador Kwame's phone rang. He glanced at it and smiled. "Gentlemen, ladies, that's the Minister of Health. She's very interested in this case." He put the phone on speaker. "Good afternoon," came the minister's crisp voice. "I've reviewed the file. I'm ordering an immediate independent investigation into Dr. Okonkwo's license revocation, and I'm suspending any punitive action against her pending that review." Dr. Adelik's face went pale. "Minister, with respect." The respect should have been shown 7 years ago. The minister cut him off. "This hearing is adjourned." That evening, Chioma returned to her small apartment in Surulere, exhausted but unable to process everything that had happened. Her phone had rung constantly. News media, medical associations, even international outlets. She'd ignored them all. A knock came at her door. Through the peephole, she saw Nurse Blessing holding a box of chin-chin and a bottle of Fanta. "I brought provisions for the celebrity," Blessing said when Chioma opened the door. "I'm not a celebrity. I'm a cleaner who got lucky." "You're a healer who got courageous," Blessing corrected, pushing past her into the modest living room. "And we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" Blessing settled onto the worn sofa. "Chioma, you don't understand what you've done. You haven't just saved 2 lives. You've challenged the entire medical establishment's monopoly on what counts as legitimate knowledge. I just wanted to help that woman. And you did. But now..." Blessing gestured at the phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. "Now you become a symbol. Traditional versus modern medicine. African knowledge versus Western training. The poor versus the powerful." Chioma sank into a chair. "I never wanted to be a symbol. I just wanted to deliver babies." "Too late for that, sister." Blessing opened the Fanta and poured 2 glasses. "The question is, what will you do with this platform?" Before Chioma could answer, her phone rang from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Dr. Okonkwo?" An elderly woman's voice, speaking Igbo. "My name is Dr. Patience Ease. I'm 83 years old, and I was one of the first female obstetricians in Nigeria." "Dr. Ease, I know who you are," Chioma said, shocked. The woman was a legend. "Good. Then you know I don't waste time. I've been following your case. What you did in that delivery room, that spiral rotation technique, my grandmother taught me something similar 60 years ago. I used it twice in my career, both times successfully. Both times I was reprimanded for it." Chioma's heart raced. "You were..." The medical establishment has spent decades trying to erase traditional knowledge from African medicine. They call it modernization, but it's really colonization. Dr. Ease's voice grew stronger. "We've lost so much wisdom because we were taught to be ashamed of what our grandmothers knew." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're not alone. There are dozens of us, older doctors, midwives, nurses, who've been silenced for integrating traditional practices. And there are thousands of traditional birth attendants in villages across Nigeria who've been criminalized, forced underground, despite their knowledge." Chioma felt tears burning her eyes. "I thought I was the only one." "No, child. You're just the first one who got famous enough that they couldn't bury you quietly." Dr. Ease paused. "I'm organizing a meeting next week. Medical professionals and traditional practitioners together. We're calling it the African Birth Wisdom Alliance. Will you join us?" I don't know if I'm ready." "Chioma," Dr. Ease's voice softened. "For 7 years, you've been hiding. Cleaning floors, making yourself small, believing the lie that you did something wrong. But you save lives. You've always saved lives. It's time to stop hiding." After the call ended, Chioma sat in silence. Blessing touched her shoulder. "What did she say?" "That I'm not alone," Chioma whispered. "That there are others." "So what will you do?" Chioma looked at her hands, the hands that had scrubbed floors and delivered miracles. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm going to stop being afraid. For the first time in 7 years, she smiled with real hope. The backlash came swiftly. By the end of the week, conservative medical journals published scathing editorials. Dangerous precedent, read one headline. When desperation overrides medical ethics, read another. Dr. Adebayo gave a carefully worded interview to West Africa Medical Review, warning about the romanticization of traditional practices and the risk of undermining decades of progress in maternal health. Chioma arrived at St. Catherine's Hospital for what was supposed to be a private meeting with the board, only to find news cameras outside. Dr. Okonkwo, are you advocating for witchcraft in hospitals? Dr. Okonkwo, should we fire all trained doctors and hire village midwives? Dr. Okonkwo, how do you respond to Dr. Adebayo's claim that you got lucky and could have killed the ambassador's wife? Security rushed her inside, but the damage was done. The narrative was shifting from miracle worker to dangerous radical. Inside, Ambassador Kwame waited with his legal team and a representative from the Ministry of Health. They're trying to destroy you, he said bluntly. Adebayo and his colleagues are mounting a counteroffensive. They're arguing that restoring your license would open the floodgates to unqualified practitioners. Maybe they're right, Chioma said quietly. What? Blessing, who'd accompanied her, looked shocked. Not about me being unqualified, Chioma clarified, but about the floodgates. If I get my license back because of traditional knowledge, what stops someone with no medical training from claiming the same? That's the key question, said the ministry representative, a sharp-eyed woman named Dr. Folake Ogundipe. And I think you just identified the solution. She pulled out a folder. What if we created a new certification? One that requires both modern medical training and demonstrated competency in traditional birth practices? Call it Integrated Maternal Health Specialist. Ambassador Kwame leaned forward. A bridge between both worlds. Exactly. Dr. Okonkwo would be the first to receive it, but not the last. We develop rigorous standards, combining evidence-based medicine with properly documented traditional techniques. The medical establishment will fight this, Chioma said. Let them, Dr. Ogundipe smiled. The minister is very interested in being on the right side of history. And with Ambassador Kwame's connections and Amara's story, we have leverage. But the real test came 2 days later. Chioma was called to an emergency delivery in St. Catherine's. A woman named Funk, 38 weeks pregnant with twins, both in breech position. The attending physicians were debating a C-section when complications arose. Funk's blood pressure spiked, and she began showing signs of eclampsia. Dr. Adebayo was the attending. When he saw Chioma arrive, his jaw tightened. Who called her? I did, Nurse Blessing said firmly. The patient requested her specifically. This woman has no authority to. Please, Funk gasped from the bed. I've read about her. I want her to try. Dr. Adebayo faced a choice. In front of the nursing staff, other doctors, and the patient herself, he could either deny a woman in crisis her choice of practitioner or work with the woman who'd upstaged him. Fine, he said coldly, but I'm observing every move. One mistake, and you're done. Chioma approached the bed, her heart pounding. This time, there were no 12 specialists frozen in panic. This time, it was a direct challenge. She examined Funk, feeling the position of both babies. Twin A was frank breech. Twin B was complete breech. Dangerous, but not impossible. I'll need your help, Dr. Adebayo, Chioma said, meeting his eyes. Your expertise with twin deliveries and mine with positioning techniques. Together. For a long moment, he stared at her. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Tell me what you need. The delivery of Funk's twins took 90 minutes of intense collaboration. Chioma guided the positioning using techniques her grandmother had taught her, while Dr. Adebayo managed the medical interventions, monitoring, medications, equipment. They moved like dancers learning a new rhythm, hesitant at first, then finding synchronization. When the first baby girl emerged, crying lustily, the room exhaled. When the second followed 8 minutes later, equally healthy, something shifted in the air. Dr. Adebayo held the second twin, staring at the squirming infant in wonder. That spiral rotation you did with twin B, he he said slowly, when his shoulder was caught. I've never seen that maneuver. It's called Nkita movement, Chioma explained, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. My grandmother said it mimics how puppies navigate the birth canal. You work with the baby's natural flexibility. It's brilliant, he said quietly, then louder so the whole room could hear. It's absolutely brilliant. The nurses exchanged shocked glances. Dr. Adebayo, admitting someone else was right? He turned to Chioma. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. Dr. Adebayo. No, let me finish. He handed the baby to a nurse and faced her directly. 7 years ago, I was on the medical board committee that revoked your license. I voted to strip your credentials. The room went silent. I told myself we were protecting patients from dangerous practices. But the truth, he exhaled heavily. I was protecting my own ego, my Western training, my belief that anything not published in the Lancet couldn't possibly be valid. Chioma didn't know what to say. I watched you save Ambassador Kwame's wife, and I was angry, he continued. Angry that you succeeded where I failed. Angry that my expensive education wasn't enough. But watching you today, working with you. He paused. You're not replacing modern medicine. You're completing it. Funk, exhausted but glowing as her twins were placed on her chest, spoke up. That's what I tried to tell the other doctors. I didn't want to choose between hospital safety and traditional wisdom. I wanted both. What if we could offer both? Dr. Adebayo said thoughtfully. Dr. Okonkwo, what if St. Catherine's created a new department? Integrated maternal care. You would lead it. I don't have my license yet. You will, he said firmly. And I'll testify to the medical board myself. I'll tell them how wrong I was. Ambassador Kwame appeared in the doorway, having arrived to check on Funk, one of his wife's close friends. He took in the scene. The healthy twins, Chioma and Dr. Adebayo, standing together, the atmosphere of cautious hope. I have news, he announced. The medical board has scheduled an emergency session for tomorrow. Dr. Ogendive's proposal for the Integrated Maternal Health Specialist certification has gone viral. Over 50,000 healthcare workers have signed a petition supporting it. Chioma's phone buzzed. It was Dr. Patience Ease. The elders are ready. 23 traditional birth attendants from across Nigeria, all with decades of experience, all willing to share their knowledge if the medical establishment will listen. Will you stand with us tomorrow? Blessing squeezed Chioma's shoulder. Girl, you've started a revolution. I just wanted to deliver babies, Chioma whispered. You did more than that, Funk said from the bed, each arm cradling a daughter. You built a bridge. You showed us we don't have to abandon our roots to embrace progress. Dr. Adebayo extended his hand to Chioma. Tomorrow at the medical board, you won't stand alone. I'll be there, and I suspect I won't be the only one. Chioma took his hand, and something that had been broken 7 years ago began, finally, to heal. The medical board hearing room was packed. Traditional birth attendants in their wrappers sat beside doctors in white coats. Medical students crowded the aisles. News cameras lined the back wall, broadcasting across Nigeria and beyond. Chioma walked to the front, flanked by Dr. Adebayo on one side and Dr. Patience Ease on the other. Behind them came Ambassador Kwame and Amara, carrying their son, Adana and young Chukwudi. Funk with her week-old twins. Nurse Blessing, Professor Okafor, an army of witnesses to what was possible when pride gave way to wisdom. Dr. Femi Adelik, chairman of the Medical Association, called the session to order. His expression was unreadable. This is an unprecedented hearing, he began. We are here to address not just one woman's license, but the future of maternal health care in Nigeria. He paused. Dr. Okonkwo, you've submitted a proposal for integrating traditional birth knowledge into modern medical practice. In your own words, explain why we should consider this. Chioma stood, her voice steady. Honorable members, I'm not asking you to abandon modern medicine. I'm asking you to remember that medicine has always belonged to African mothers long before there were hospitals. My grandmother delivered 3,000 babies. 0 maternal deaths. That knowledge didn't disappear because we built hospitals. We just stopped listening to it. She gestured to the traditional birth attendants in the room. These women represent centuries of collective experience. They know things about breech births, cord complications, and maternal positioning that aren't in textbooks because no one thought to write them down. Not because they don't work. Dr. Patience E. stood. I'm 83 years old. I spent 60 years as an obstetrician, trained in London, respected internationally. But my grandmother taught me more about reading a woman's body during labor than any professor ever did. I've stayed silent about that my whole career, ashamed. Her voice cracked. I'm done being ashamed. One by one, other doctors stood. Young ones, old ones. From Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, Enugu. I used traditional positioning techniques, but I never documented them. My mother was a traditional midwife. She taught me tricks that have saved lives. I was punished in medical school for asking about local practices. The confessions poured out like a dam breaking. Dr. Adelik held up his hand for silence. I've read Dr. Ogundipe's proposal for the Integrated Maternal Health Specialist certification. It requires full medical training plus demonstrated competency in documented traditional practices, rigorous standards, oversight, evidence collection. He looked directly at Chioma. 7 years ago, we made a decision based on fear of the unknown, fear of losing control, fear of being wrong. Today, we have a choice. We can continue to fear or we can lead. The room held its breath. The medical board votes to restore Dr. Chioma Okonkwo's medical license, effective immediately, Dr. Adelik announced. Furthermore, we approve the creation of the Integrated Maternal Health Specialist Certification Program. Dr. Okonkwo will serve as the program's founding director. The room erupted in applause and tears. Ambassador Kwame embraced Chioma. You did it. We did it, she corrected, looking at the crowd of faces, traditional midwives and modern doctors, finally in the same room, finally listening to each other. 6 months later, Chioma stood in St. Catherine's new integrated maternal care wing, wearing scrub for the first time in 7 years. On her coat, 2 titles, Dr. Chioma Okonkwo, MD, IMHS. The first patient was a young woman, scared and alone, with a complicated pregnancy. Chioma took her hand. Tell me, what does your body feel? And she listened, with her medical training, with her grandmother's wisdom, with her whole heart. Because healing had never been about choosing between old and new. It had always been about honoring both. The Indie, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever?